You want to hear about Fight Island or lack thereof? Stay tuned. You want to hear about mixed martial arts, bad judges, and stuff like that? Stay tuned. You want to hear? Stay tuned. It's probably going to be my fight companion for a while. We'll see if I can get him to stick around. Raul, no introduction on my part. Introduce yourself, sir.
Hello. My name is Raul, like Danny says, or aka as Raul as it gets, because as you'll come to see, I will say what I think, especially when it comes to MMA. Whether you like it or not, it is what it is. So why am I on this show? Well, basically, I'm no expert. Not some guy who's either trained professionals or anything like that, but I have a passion and love for MMA. I've dabbled in many arts since I was 5 years old. Anything from the traditionals, Kempo, Aikido, Taekwondo, to the more modern and more popular styles now like Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, General MMA, and Judo and things like that. So, like I said, I love the sport. I want to share my opinion. I think I can bring a little of my own into it.
100%. And what's happened with us is Raul has been a friend of mine for many, many years, and it keeps growing, obviously. I thought it was only for like 10, but I think it's more than 10 years at this point, man. I really do. I think it's easily going past 15, I think, if you really want to get into it. Because I met you when I was like probably 15. So not giving away my age anymore here. But yeah, so we've had a lot of debates, a lot of arguments. We see eye to eye on most things. So maybe that's not the fun part of the show. But the fun part, I mean, definitely worth mentioning that we've disagreed a lot. And I can't help but feel it's going to happen. And that's why you're here, man, because you're also a fight fan. So yeah. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the UFC, in the world in general, but as you would expect, the UFC right now is going through an extremely different change. We've never seen it go through a situation in which it has to literally build a place somewhere isolated called Fight Island.
Yeah. Well, I think more than ever we need MMA because like any sport or martial arts, MMA will only see you for what you are and what you bring in terms of athletic skills. And I think we need that today. We need a little filter to kind of like turn off the news for a little bit and let's just watch some people fight. And this Fight Island thing is crazy. I mean, when I heard it, I was like, okay, so they're bringing a video game to life, aka Mortal Kombat. But it's not what they really promoted. Let's be real. It's going to be obviously way more professional, which it should be, in my opinion. But it would have been cool to seen some like walkouts in the beach with some like tikis and fire and shit like that.
Oh yeah. No, somebody with an actual finishing move. I do, I got excited, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's a sanctioned sport. There can't be sand in the octagon. We get it. But the thing is, man, I thought that Fight Island was going to be an actual island, like an actual, and all it is some secluded piece of sand somewhere in the middle of wherever the fuck Aladdin and Abu took off. And
yeah, it's a massive island that's honestly designed for all kinds of sports. They have a whole bunch of like venues and complexes built there for anything. But as I've heard around the industry in general, is like you kind of need that. I mean, you're talking about where are the fighters going to warm up, where are they going to cut weight, where are you going to house them while they wait for their fight. If you're doing this in an actual beach, you're going to have guys just sitting under a palm tree chilling until their fight comes up, So in terms of a professional sport and logistics, it's understandable. But as fans, you want the epic movie-like.
Bro, but that could have happened. At least a beach. At least give us a beach. I was watching Ariel's interview with Cormier. I think it makes sense. At least a beach, man. Some kind of water or something,
I don't even think it's surrounded by water. That's the thing. It's technically an island, but not that kind of island.
Yeah. I mean, technically, what is an island then? That's what I'd like to know. Why the word? But it does sound badass, and I think it's catchy. That much I can tell you.
And then apparently, so Dana White came out today. He was announcing the rest of the July cards that's going to take place on the island. And it seems, I heard the actual words, last fight card, which makes me think this is temporary. Like they're going to stop using this after July.
Last fight card on Fight Island? You mean they built all this shit just for like a couple of events?
I mean, they use that word and that makes me wonder, well, why would you say last? Or maybe you just misspoke. And I don't see why. I can see why you wouldn't have to go back if things do somewhat go back to normal. But it'd be nice to leave it open. Like I've spoken to you before, I think it's going to leave doors open for maybe fighters that have visa issues. And it's a really big fight or a really big name. That will solve that problem. And obviously, it looks like they didn't buy this island like everyone thought they did. They thought they bought an island. They obviously are renting it or like paying to use it because it's again this massive island for other sports.
I mean, Dana White said it's being built. He used those words. I remember that shit clearly, and I remember thinking to myself, "What kind of project can you put together?
Yeah, no.
Actually, going to what?
He's building like a facility to house the octagon, but the island has been built. It's been there. And I've seen maps of it. And like I said, they don't. It's not just like an island just for just for UFC events. They have all kinds of venues there for anything.
So they rented like a Middle Eastern Chuck E. Cheese.
They're like, yo, who is gonna let us come here and not ask any questions? And the Dubai's were just like, it's all good, bro.
It doesn't matter if it's Fight Island or not. You ain't coming. Only the fighters. That's for them to ask. And by the way, exciting news this Saturday. Camacho fights. Frank Camacho fights Matt Frivola. That's in the early prelims, I believe. That's going to be a lot of fun, man. We're going to do a fight watch party, and I don't know, I might get some content on that. But and Frank was super excited to be fighting in the Apex. And hey, get this, look how embarrassing this is real quick. Just a fun fact. I was interviewing him, and I was like, hey, so like you fighting in Fight Island? In my head, I meant Apex. Like, oh, it's so exciting you're fighting in the Apex. And what actually came out was, you're fighting in Fight Island. And he's like, no, I'm fighting at Vegas, the big dream. Every fighter's aspiring to fight to Vegas, you selfish motherfucker. Like, chill. Fight Island is later. But I can't help but feel that if I was a fighter, I would want to be one of the ones that went to Fight Island. Just for the historical implications of the whole thing.
Right. I think it depends who you ask. I heard that interview and it kind of broke my heart a little bit because when he mentioned the dream, I'm like, well, it's not really the dream. When you hear a Vegas fight, it's because you've got these thousands of people that are going out there to see you in like one of these historic venues, whether it's the new T-Mobile Arena that's now like the go-to, or MGM where all these boxing matches have taken place. It's not the dream. I don't think it is. You're in Vegas, but it's not the same energy. It's not the same purpose why you're there. And in terms of Fight Island, I think it depends who you ask. I think a lot of fighters don't want to go out there. Traveling for them is a hassle. It really affects their recovery or just their overall mental aspect for the fight, whether they have to acclimate to the environment or whether they have to get used to the jet lag. And for others, I think it would be really exciting. Probably the younger guys, just because they're a part of it and they're fresh in the sport and nothing really phases them in that aspect. But now I think the more experienced fighters will probably, if it was up to them, they wouldn't have to do it because it's unnecessary. But it beats not fighting and not getting paid.
Absolutely. And another thing I was going to ask you, we've had how many events without audiences? 2 like legit events. And there was the one in Brazil.
Like 5 already.
Yeah, there's been a lot.
More.
So there was the one in Brazil before the actual shutdown where UFC went off the map for about a month or something like that. After that, it's been nothing but events with no audience. So we're looking at, like you said, a handful of events. Okay, we've had enough. Would you say we've had enough of a sample size as to what these kind of fights look like? Would you say, okay, we've had a good idea based on 5 events as to the pros and cons of having an audience? If you feel that way, what do you prefer, audience or no audience?
Well, for sure, we've seen enough. And I think you can see that from what Dana White has spoken about, how other leagues are coming to him to like, hey, so what are you doing? Because they've tested it enough times where they're almost becoming experts at it. Because with every new event, they've learned from the past mistakes and they do it better the next time. So we've had enough. In terms of the differences from what I heard from fighters and from my own experience and just, overall competitions, either whether it's amateur or just jiu-jitsu competitions, it has to be bad. Like it has to be really affecting their performance because there's in any sport that energy from the crowd. I mean, we see it in a game 6 type Jordan type of person. We see it in the Tom Brady's where it's that last minute clutch moment and it's that energy of the fans cheering you on that gets you to do something so amazing. And you're not getting that. I mean, we hear the hits harder and we can really feel impacts, which is good as fans, and we can hear the coaches and what they're telling them. And that's great insight. But as the fighters, it has to be really like eerie. And I've heard them say the word eerie, like, yeah, it's not good. Like we feel weird. It's almost like you're training rather than actually fighting.
Yeah. So again, the question comes from 2 separate perspectives. The first perspective is from as a fighter, as a fight fan, watching it as a fight fan. what do you prefer? I'll start there. Fight fan, what do you say? Do you prefer no audience?
Oh, for sure. For
Okay.
sure.
As a fan,
And
you want the audience.
yeah, no, and as a fan too. I mean, I can understand a person who's maybe never done martial arts and they can appreciate that more subtle, that silence where they can, again, hear the hits and hear the coaches. But as someone who has experienced what a leg kick feels like, for example, I don't need to hear it. I know that shit hurt. I want the, whoa, when like something crazy happens. And then, but when you don't have that, it's almost like anticlimactic.
What I was telling Frank though is that I do miss the because like, here's the thing, when especially if you're trying to show someone new fights and you're like, let's watch these fights, and and some crazy stuff's going on where if the audience would have been there, it would have been like, this place is going wild, Joe, the place is rumbling, and back and forth, like the any fight you can name where people were out, like I don't know, whatever, any big fight, right? People roaring, everything's going crazy, but you don't get that when you're watching it now, right? So what happens is you have these crazy exchanges,
yeah,
only heavy breathing to ensue. You don't really hear anything else, and that kind of kills the. I don't know. Do you agree with me? The newcomer to the sport who's trying to appreciate it, they're going to miss out on a lot of things because they might see like a jiu-jitsu leg roll that they think, that guy's just breakdancing, no big deal. But in an actual arena, everybody would have lost their shit because they know he was going after a leg lock, etc.
It's just, I don't even think it matters how long you've been in the sport. MMA in general is a sport that relies so much on ego. Like if you don't go in there thinking you're the baddest motherfucker in the planet, you're already off to a bad start. Honestly, that's just the way it is. It's so much about your own confidence, and you got fighters like McGregor, you got fighters like John Jones or even Izzy now, where they know they're badass, but they need the reinforcement from the crowds when they walk out, that they're already starting the match in this whole other level than their opponent. Like, man, people are here to see me. I'm bad. Like, you're about to get your ass kicked. But take that out of the equation. You're walking out to a super quiet venue where you don't have that ego boost that would have really made a difference, I think, because I've experienced it. There's a difference between going to a competition and going up against a guy who already intimidates you and you're just like, wow, this is going to be hard. That's it. You already lost half the battle. So I don't think it matters where you are in the sport in terms of experience. It has to suck either way.
But I was talking more of like getting the newcomers to enjoy a sport. Like if you're, you know what I mean? Like, for example, if you're watching a football game and all I did was run a yard and you don't know anything about football, all you saw was a 1 yard handoff, you go, okay, that was pretty uneventful. And then but now if a crowd was there, you'd hear them go, rah, and then it'll probably even motivate you to even ask the person next to you or just wonder like, hey, why is everyone cheering? And then somebody has to come in, because it was fourth down. They needed 1 yard to get to the first down. And that's why the crowd lost their shit. You wouldn't have had that if you're just trying to understand the sport for the first time and you're watching and you see a 1 yard run and nothing, and it's a big play, 4th and 1, and they get it. You're gonna miss it if you don't hear the crowd at least. I mean, I'm just saying there's a lot of things for the fight fans that get lost with the casuals. Sorry, I should say like the newcomers.
Yeah,
might get lost without an audience. So many factors, right? Because as a fighter, you want the audience, you want the hype, you want the crowd, you want your name being chanted. But one thing I don't damn miss, and I've been to a handful of UFC fights since I moved up here to Indiana, because luckily up here, Detroit, and 2 hours that way. Chicago, an hour that way. Indianapolis, 2 hours that way. Everything's close. Gone to a good amount of fights, and every time it gets boring, I don't think fights are boring, but whenever there's a clinch game or anything like that, boo, boo, and you're sitting there, one motherfucker starts that whole wave of pews all over the arena, and now it's like you're not even watching the fight anymore. You're just listening to a bunch of howling humans. I don't like that. I hate when people. Yeah, so that's one thing I don't miss.
I definitely don't like it either. And you're right. You're even for the newcomers or the casuals, a sport like jiu-jitsu, for example, where a lot of the moves are super complicated and they're all half time it looks like they're just hugging, but obviously they're trying to do something very complex. The fans know that and they cheer, for example, when someone goes for the armbar, but to a casual it'd be like, why is that guy tangling up with that guy's arm? So that reaction from the fans can really help casuals be like, okay, something's happening. Let me keep an eye on this. So definitely, I totally agree with that. And that's what I'm saying. Again, I think all the way around, it's just we need the fans. And that's cool. That goes for any sport, dude. Like, can you imagine baseball without fans? Like baseball's already, I love baseball, but it's boring as it is.
Have fans. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I said baseball doesn't have fans, but I'm kidding. No, I agree. Home run, 9th inning home run, grand slam to win the game. And you hear like an umpire, run the bases. Come on, bring it home.
It's like
It's obvious.
you strike out a batter, and I know it's an MMA show. Don't just listen. I'm getting there. Imagine striking out in the ninth inning, and it's just super quiet compared to like all the fans just cheering or booing that you got striked out. It's the same thing in MMA. Last second Kobe Garbrandt 2 weeks ago type of knockout, and then crickets is just like, first of all, from the fighter, I would be like, that's the suckiest knockout ever. That sucked. Like, I want people to come pick me up, and I want fans cheering and pulling up flags, and compared to like a knockout where, yeah, it was great. I won the fight, but man, it's not as juicy as it could have been.
I never thought of that. You're so right. After a knockout, people jump the fence. They flex to the crowd like, I did it. I knocked him out. And now it's like you knock someone out, and it's like you look at the camera. All you can do is now point at ESPN camera and go,
yeah, I hope you're wearing your masks over there. Like, what else can you do?
It's so I'm off. So here's how it all started. When they removed the audience, I was like, yo, this is badass. Like, get them fucking ignorant people out of here so I can like appreciate a fight, which is not fair to say, because if you're paying top good money to go to a UFC fight in person, you're obviously into it enough. But my point is, you get a lot of these drunk people that just, like I said, start howling in the middle of the. Anyway, I did say I'm so glad that we get to do away with that. I'm also glad we do away with not being able to hear certain corners. Like, remember that fight with Alex Smith? Was it Smith against heavyweight, the guy who usually fights heavyweight or light heavyweight, Glover Teixeira, and I don't know if you ever saw that fight. The Glover Teixeira beat up that guy. Anyway, so they were fighting, and I think it was Alex Smith. Either way, don't kill me for not knowing the names. But either way, it was Glover Teixeira beating this guy up for 5 rounds, and his corner was yelling a lot of things at him, and the commentators were looking at each other saying, "Hey, man, I think this is bad cornering. Like, we're hearing their commands now that we don't have an audience, and it's actually the first thing you want to avoid doing that they teach at the top-notch schools is, in an actual fight, you only want to give your fighters in the middle of the round things that are very like, hey, 1-2. Remember, you have the 1-2, right, and keep watching. And then if they shoot a takedown, sprawl. Like, you want to give very basic stuff. What you don't want to do is what they were doing with this guy, Anthony Smith. That was his name.
Okay.
Maybe not. My brain.
I honestly don't recall. That's why I'm not inputting. I do not recall.
I got you. So either way, they were yelling like, "Give him the 1-2, leg kick, move, left, right." They were giving him like honestly what seemed like a code breaker in a PlayStation game to hack the game. It was like, go left, go up, go down. Every five seconds, it was a command, and Anthony Smith was trying to listen to them. So he was doing all these things, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm getting tired. And the corner wasn't looking at him going, hey, he might be tired. Let me just stop shouting stuff. They kept shouting stuff at him to the point where there were articles written the next day all over MMA Weekly. Sure, everybody was writing articles about how his corner was terrible with him. I don't think that would have surfaced had we had an audience. Little things like that you wouldn't have heard. And I think that's great for the actual mechanics of the sport to see how all these things play out, because we've never heard anyone ever talk about bad cornering before.
But that's an easy solution. Like, I think we can still have that with fans, because just mic up the coaches. Just mic them up.
Put them on sporadically and just have them listen. And then, of course, then you have the commentator contamination, right? Where they start shouting things like, oh, man, he's not checking those kicks, Joe. It's been 2 rounds. He's not checking the left. Every time he switches hips, he's not checking the leg kick. And then all of a sudden the fighter hears Daniel Cormier, and he's like, bet. And then he wins the fight, gives Daniel Cormier the thanks. Like, hey, buddy, I won the fight thanks to you. Because I started checking the leg kicks. And I think things like this are happening. And it's great to see this, the good things and the bad things. I don't think commentators should be talking to the fighters, essentially. So long story short, I've enjoyed it. No audience. I am going to say that for the longevity of the sport and what makes everything so hype, I'm sorry to sound social right now. I'm usually antisocial, but I think we need the people. We need the people. Yeah,
I mean, beggars can be choosers. I'm just glad we got something and we're watching something. But no, without a doubt, again, both from fighters' perspective or fans' perspective, it's a sport. Sports were built for fans. Taking it back to the days of the gladiators, it's for the people, potentially by the people. We need the fans out there.
Yeah, but we didn't have TVs back then, so I would argue we still have it for the people now. It's just the couch of your own house, which I don't think is fun. I think people. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm all about atmosphere and ambiance. I think nothing. I would love to watch the fights live. I know that you get to see way more on TV, but the atmosphere of being there live, like I'm sorry, I wouldn't. I would love to have been there when Connor knocked out Aldo. Like I don't
Yeah,
care
but exactly. Think about it this way. I mean, you can watch movies at home, but why do we still go to movie theater? There's an experience factor to it,
exactly.
and and sports provide that. I know you can only get that going in person, and that's why, like you said, why do I pay tickets to go see a UFC event if I can watch it from home? Well, there's an experience to it that I want, and you can only feel that there.
Oh, agreed. So, just looking at both sides of that whole thing. Yeah, you did real quick, if you don't mind. You did mention something to me about how MMA is losing its MMA arts roots. And I never really elaborated with you what you meant by that. That's something that not a lot of people have said to me. So,
Yeah. So
so
I feel like it's a topic a lot of people are talking about. I mean, I know professionals from the media industry, they're just going for the clickbait and the drama. But I got into MMA as a fan because I saw it was all about the martial arts. The beauty of seeing a guy test his kickboxing against this judo guy. And I'm not saying that I want to go back to where like fighters are just, one-sided fighters, not at all. But I'm talking about more about the industry in terms of, the companies and how they're running things. UFC, I feel like nowadays they're so busy putting on a show that it's not even about the fighting anymore. Like we don't think of a card as, oh man, like I really want to see how McGregor's wrestling is gonna go deal with Habib's wrestling. It's more about like, oh, McGregor talk all this smack. I want to see his face get busted in by Habib. Like, well, that's cool, and I'm not saying I don't enjoy it, but MMA in general right now, I don't like in the direction it's going in that sense. I really wish that's not the case, that we're losing the whole idea of the sport. It's like, hey guys, it's to test our martial arts skills.
I
And
mean,
I
that's
don't, I
always
don't.
been the case. That's always been the case, though, right? Like, that's essentially what fighting has always faced in terms of hype, right? So, for the sake of basics, let's take it to boxing, right? Like, boxing was always a skill set to see who was the faster, more technical mover, and then it became, well, yeah, but what really excites people is when there's actual tension, drama, storylines. And I think that's one interesting thing that the fight game brings that a lot of other sports don't. You'll see it sometimes, like for example in the Super Bowl. Like before the Super Bowl starts, they'll hype the shit out of you with like, oh, this quarterback Manning had a neck injury last year, and somebody left him a note in the locker room that said you'll never make it anywhere, and here we are, Super Bowl 50, and you'll have those cool storylines, and maybe like, oh, these two guys went to college and they shared dorms together, and now one of them is a safety, the other one's a wide receiver, so they're going to be matching up tonight. You might get that every now and then, but UFC is a sport where they can really, those embeddeds, man, ooh, they can sell some
Yeah.
nice storylines. And I think that in that you risk that, what you're saying, you risk the whole, hey, let's not forget that the real reason that you should be enjoying this, or at least that I would like to think people are enjoying it, is because the martial arts aspect of it is being displayed. Like we're looking to see who can display MMA, martial arts mixed together to see who's the most efficient. And I
No,
think,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead.
No, I totally agree. And like I said, I'm human too, and I want the drama because it adds, the fun aspect to it for sure. But it also comes to fighters as well. I mean, what are fighters going into the sport for nowadays? What used to be, oh man, yeah, I was a fighter my whole life, and finally I found this industry where I can not only keep fighting and keep improving, but I'm getting paid and making a living. That's great. Where now it's just like guy graduates from high school. I don't really want to go to college or get a job, a 9 to 5. I'm going to start doing MMA. And apparently like everyone can do MMA now. It's like, no, like there has to be some sort of love and passion to it so that you're not just doing it for the paycheck. It should be because you love the sport as well, and see more creativity in the MMA fighting style.
I don't know if is that something that's happening. People are just like, well, you're saying MMA as a fad, like it's becoming a fad where everybody's just resorting to it, like, oh, I'm done. I don't want to do anything else. Let me just.
It's definitely a fact. How many either WWE wrestlers or even football players that have like not been successful in their sport and be like, okay, well, I guess MMA is next. Like, no, that's not how that works. Like, you can't just switch over to MMA.
Right. This is okay. So now it clicked in my brain. This is definitely the critique I have as well. It's kind of like it's losing its value because I think we talked about this through text once. We were texting each other back and forth. I think it's terrible that Brock Lesnar gets a title shot coming straight from the WWE just because of his status. You know,
That was the example I was going to bring up. Like, do you consider Brock Lesnar a martial artist?
I mean, he's got amazing wrestling, actual real Olympic wrestling. Yeah, he's got decent
Perfect.
grappling. Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah.
But is that how he fought in the cage? Or did he just tackle the guy down in hopes that his weight and his hammer fist did the job?
I mean, okay, yeah. I mean, so okay, I need to know where you're trying to go with this before I know where to.
Maybe I'm just being like
because at the end of the
maybe
day,
I'm just, the thing is, I'm sorry. The thing is, in terms of definition, a lot of people will say, yeah, if my style of fighting is getting to the ground and hammer fisting you, that is a martial art. And by the definition of martial, that's fine.
I mean,
but it hurts to see. Maybe it's just like the fighter in me, but it hurts to see these guys train their whole life and they started off as a passion before anything else, and then having a guy like Brock Lesnar come in just because he's big and has a big name, take these spots and these positions all because he can ram a guy down and hold him down.
so a lot of things go into MMA, right? Like the same way a lot of things go into jiu-jitsu, right? Flexibility and strength and all these things combined make you who you are as a fighter. Some guys are super strong, so at the beginning of their training, they realize that the Kimura is the most go-to move for them because it's the strong man's move. It doesn't require as much technique as others, and you can just twist that arm and get the shoulder to pop. That's still legit, though. I mean, if a guy, all that he knows is how to be strong enough to get a Kimura, goes to a tournament, he'll get a gold medal if he can hold everyone down and get a damn same move. I don't mind that there is a guy coming into the UFC to try to prove himself, especially if you've got. I mean, here's the thing: wrestling is not, it's not by any means a striking sport, right? A striking art, but it is an art that teaches you movement and it teaches you how to distance gauge and how to close distances. And you can certainly use a lot of wrestling footwork to do very funky stuff in MMA where it's not boxing traditionally, but it is very, very effective in closing distance, which 100% what they teach you in wrestling is how to manipulate everything in grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all these arts is the surveillance of distance, right? I don't mind seeing a guy who has all these basic things already say, hey, I got pretty big hands. They're hefty. I feel like I know enough to just train a few months and strike and get a good idea and go out there and see what happens. And he became champion. That's the part that I'm not going to lie. I'm not a Brock Lesnar fan. And in the UFC, I'm not a Brock Lesnar fan. I whatever. But the truth is he kept shutting me up, right? Did you see? I mean, look at the fights against everybody that he fought, right? I forgot the name of the guy he fought. Heath Herring had a great performance against him. I mean, look what he did to I know Couture was older, but still. Couture took out Couture in heavyweight.
Frank Mir.
That one hurt the most.
That one hurt a lot. I remember. I think we saw that one together. I remember that.
That was UFC 100. No, actually, 100 was the rematch. Yeah, 100 was the rematch.
Probably, good memory. Yeah, no, that was heartbreaking because again, as a martial artist, like that shouldn't happen. You're talking about a black belt jiu-jitsu practitioner, in Frank Mir, and all because a cage is behind you and doesn't let you run, which is fine. It's part of the sport. This guy's just going to overpower you and win the fight. Again, I don't take it away from him because it's a fight. You won it. That's fine. But he should have been tested more, I guess.
I still don't get your point, though. I mean, here's the thing. Jiu-jitsu.
I'm just bitter, dude. I'm bitter. There, you got it? That's what you want me to hear? I'm bitter.
No. Okay, wait, no. Hear me out. So what I'm trying to say is this: like I love Frank Mir's jiu-jitsu. I think it's one of the best jiu-jitsu we've seen in the heavyweight in a long time. Maybe Verdum could be one of those that kind of contends with him, but I just love. I mean, I'm sorry. Mir has 2 submissions in the UFC that are amazing. Once again, unfortunately, Heath Herring, you get fucked.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, by the way, this fighter's lost to these guys. He popped his forearm out of place, and then he broke Nogueira's arm. I mean, like, that's some serious, scary stuff. Jiu-jitsu at the heavyweight level, I mean, you're talking about broken limbs instantly. It's disgusting. But
Yeah.
Frank Mir is a beast. But here's the thing, and what I like about seeing things like a guy like Brock Lesnar, here, if I have to be positive on him, is that I did enjoy seeing him come to the UFC. And then a guy like Frank Mir, he caught him the first time with like a leg lock that was pretty cool. It was very nicely set up with the little helicopter sweep type shit he did. Awesome. All that cool stuff, little helicopter movement, right? But then the second fight, something happened. Frank Mir thought that for some reason he could afford to be on his back against a guy like Brock and get away with it. And the truth is that, yes, jiu-jitsu is a great martial art off your back. But if we're being honest, the first thing you should do in a fight is look for the way not to be on your back. Jiu-jitsu teaches, and that's something I was talking about with some of my training partners here, is that the interesting yin and yang to training jiu-jitsu is that the first class is, okay, self-defense, you don't want to be on your back. You want them to be on your back, on their back. You want to be on top. Blah, 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 all this cool stuff. And always be on the thing. And then they're like, next month, we'll be going over all these series of guard. It's like, you just told me I should never be on my back. And now I'm going to take 2 months of maneuvers and tricks and sweeps and submissions from my back. And guess what happens in those 2 months? Sorry to run you off the show here, but I really want to get this done.
No, go for it.
Guess what happens now? Now you've trained my brain to see guard stuff and go, ooh, because I love it. It's fun. Jiu-jitsu is so much fun off your back. It's what makes it so unique from other martial arts, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the reality of it. In an actual altercation where somebody can punch you, kick you, knee you, etc., you don't want to be on your back. And the first thing Frank Mir did was, well, let's be fair. Frank Mir didn't mean to go on his back. He tried to throw a knee. Lesnar kind of got out of the way, and they went to the ground. I just think that Frank Mir was just too complacent. I think Frank Mir has enough of a guard to get Brock Lesnar off of him, even if he's heavier. I just think Frank Mir was looking for something off his back. And what we got to see that day was that jiu-jitsu is effective off your back, but you need to not default there, especially with a guy like Brock. So I don't mind that kind of exposure happening, because what happens is you don't want something to go the opposite direction where it's like, oh, jiu-jitsu is so over glorified that now everyone thinks that in a street fight they should play rubber guard, or in a fight they should go for what is it called, a deep half guard. It's like, no. There's no reason why in a fight you should ever be tucking your head under someone's knee.
No, there's definitely a huge difference between jiu-jitsu as a sport and like a fight that everything goes in a way. Jiu-jitsu is completely different in that aspect. I mean, you can't. I mean, I think we even see that now in MMA where fighters are fully aware, like, okay, I might have the best guard, but I don't want to be on my back in an MMA fight, because jiu-jitsu just doesn't apply the same way. Because I'm no longer worried about a neck choke or a leg crank. I'm worried about elbows, the guy standing up and like kneeing me or something like that. So yeah, and that probably started maybe after the whole Frank Mir issue, where Frank Mir probably did that strategy, saying, okay, yeah, I'll just use my jiu-jitsu and overpower him, and be like, oh, wait a second. Jiu-jitsu is not the same in MMA. In fact, it's not jiu-jitsu, it's MMA. It's just, taking skills from jiu-jitsu. Right. And that's a big difference. Any person that practices jiu-jitsu should be fully aware of that. Like, you don't want to go on your back in a street fight, even if you know jiu-jitsu.
You don't pull guard in a street fight. You don't do that. Unless you're really drunk and can't. If you're really drunk and can't stay standing, and you realize, oh, I'm better on my bed, then there. But I mean, if you're gonna
or if the guy is like some scrub and you want to show off to your friends, I'm gonna triangle this guy real quick. Sure, why not?
Yeah, but then you have here's one thing. Every time I see a triangle, I'm like, yeah, that looks effective, except biting to the balls. That's always the first thought that comes in my head. It's like, I'm sorry, I can't help but think. As I got a guy in my triangle, I'm like, yo, I got you. But if this was a real fight, you'd have me, right? You probably have, you probably rip some shit off.
I wonder how many people would have that instinct though. I think if it's tight right from the beginning, their first thing is like, yo, I can't breathe. But yeah, I can tell you someone's starting to bite.
Yeah, but you bite your way out of things. I mean, I think there's also scenarios in which, people cover your mouth, you tend to bite or whatever the fuck, I just think that, so what we got to see there was a great exposure of things that you should not be in favor of if you're fighting a guy like Brock Lesnar. And I think that's good for the sport, actually, because, why is Brock Lesnar, a guy who's not an official fighter of the UFC, why is he able to come in and out and just take out big names? He took out Frank Mir for the title. He had, he held the title for a while. He didn't actually, hold it for a while, but I mean, he held it for a good amount of time, came back, fought some up. I mean, of course, when he fought Cain Velasquez, who actually had technique in wrestling and boxing and was an actual mixed martial artist, and who weighed, I think, 20 pounds less, which was great because I love it. I love to see that, right? It's not a size game anymore. He beat the crap out of him, beat the crap out of Brock. But here's the thing, though. I do think that it's a lot of people say it's bad for the sport because, but I mean, like, look, you should always be after honesty. Because what I don't want to happen, and I was saying this earlier, is the opposite to happen. Where now jiu-jitsu is so glorified, which going back to what we're saying, to where now people think that it's a good idea to get on your back. Kung Fu gets so. Remember what happened in the 70s and 80s? The Kung Fu movies that were coming out in the 80s, right? Everybody was convinced that if you had some kind of Kung Fu belt, that you can wreck some shit. And where are the Kung Fu guys at now? Name one guy in MMA right now. Let's go to the UFC who actually comes out with a Kung Fu stance.
For sure. No way.
Because it was over glorified, and a lot of people in that era wanted to learn Kung Fu because they swore that it would work. It's like a religion. It's like, oh, look at all these magic powers I have, because it looks fancy, and it is a martial art, and it has a lot of good things to offer. But I think it's important, which is why the first UFC was ever made. Hey, all these martial arts, they're cool hobbies. They're essentially extensions of yoga, unless you put them to the test. A martial art is essentially yoga until you put it to the test against another opponent. That's how I see it. Like, oh, you can do all these cool forms in Taekwondo. That's badass. But in a moment of a fight, can you time a head kick to land right here? Boom, right here where you need it to for a one-shot knockout? Oh, no, that takes years. Oh, well, I think that's the important part is how you look at it. And if you're trying to find out which martial arts are good for combatives, fuck it. Let the Brock Lesnar's come in and expose the mirrors of the industry. I don't care.
But that's another thing that the corporate side is affecting, and in that, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you think differently, but have you noticed nowadays, even a lot of fighters that were known either for wrestling or for jiu-jitsu are becoming more strikers. And it's not because they want to, because they think it's a better strategy. It's because the UFC's incentives are a lot better for the knockouts and the strikers and the ones that put up a show in terms of just brawling back and forth. And I get it from a business perspective, but it is affecting the sport, because if you have a guy who's a pro wrestler and jiu-jitsu artist, I want to see you do that. I don't want you going out there like look at Maya's game. Like it was completely different.
Are we talking about Damian Maya?
Yeah, Damian Maya would go in there and just lay on his back.
Yeah, no, that's.
And now it's like a complete ball game. Why? Because I'm pretty sure in the background of everything, you start. I'm not saying it's Dana White directly, but you can definitely. I'm pretty sure word starts going around like, "Hey, man, like you want more events or be higher in the main card. You better start like kicking and punching some people, because at the end of the day, that's what casuals want to see, because that's what they kind of understand more or feel like it's more violent." So in a way, I feel like the game is being affected by that corporate side in that sense.
Well, I mean, so as you're saying these things, I'm looking this up right here. So submissions of the night and knockout of the night bonuses have been discontinued. What? How old is this?
Right. It's mostly now fight of the night. He's giving multiple now in almost every event. Like he gives out 2 or 3 fight of the nights. But if you look at the ones he picks, he's picking fights that our guys are just punching back and forth for like a solid minute or two, which is great. Sure. He's picking fights that were either like some crazy knockout or TKO. Again, that's fine. But it's MMA. So you're incentivizing these guys who are trying to make a living and make the most money possible and in a way conditioning them to say, okay, you're only going to really become famous and rich if you're going out there flying knee people. But it's MMA. I want to see some jiu-jitsu. I want to see some judo and some just a wrestler go down and hold a guy down for 5 minutes to show dominance in that style. And I really feel like it's definitely affecting the sport. Now, I do have a solution. I want to see what you think about the solution.
Oh, shit. Okay, I was going to say, what you got for me, bro? What you got?
Yeah, I'm a scientist. I don't bring up problems unless I think I have a solution for it. I'd just be talking shit. All right.
Let's go.
I think what One Championship is doing is pretty smart. And for 2 reasons. Number one, I think it will allow fighters to explore other styles and force them to only use it. Like, what I mean is, if you've ever seen a One Championship card, you can go from an MMA match to a Muay Thai kickboxing match right after that, and it's pure Muay Thai rules. Same thing, they'll have the pure jiu-jitsu rules. That will solve that problem where you can see fighters test themselves and not affect their MMA record. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to dabble in kickboxing, and I want to, oh cool, let's see how this guy is in pure kickboxing. No other factors involved. So you can really start just seeing, like, you can really judge a fighter by their pure martial arts skills. And I think that'd be fun for the fighters too. It's like a little bit extra money, because if the UFC pays a fighter to do just a pure rolling jiu-jitsu match, that's a really safe way to make some money. You're not really going to get that hurt. So that's one thing. And then number two, I think it also make the cards way more exciting in terms of length, a lot more fights in there. And then as both for casuals and for people who are really into martial arts and into the sport, think it makes it exciting. I mean, you can go, you're watching this great MMA fight, that's awesome. But then you have this guy who's really trying to learn some kickboxing and pick up Muay Thai. And okay, cool. Now next up is this 3-round pure Muay Thai fight where there's no groundwork, so you can really just enjoy some nice elbows and knees. Oh, and then here comes a kickboxing. So now you got maybe some karate guys that can show off a little bit because they know they don't have to worry about being taken down. And I just think that spiced it up a little bit.
And then now your fight of the night awards are going to have to be a little more like, case by case, like for per category. Instead of pound for pound, it'll be like category for category. Like, what was better, his armbar or this guy's karate head kick? And you actually weigh out the merits based on how sick the armbar was for what armbars are, and then you look at that kick for how good the form was, and you can actually start. Actually, you know what that would do realistically is start to make people really think about the what makes judging difficult. That's what and this is another topic we're going to get onto some other day for sure. But I mean, what do you see as a better move, an armbar that almost landed or a head kick that got partially blocked here? Like, what counts more in your head if you're judging?
I mean, are we talking, is this inside an MMA bout?
Yeah, inside of an MMA bout. Like in an MMA bout, one guy, let's say this is the only thing that happened in a round. One guy almost got an armbar. He switched his hips. He almost locked it in. The guy slips out. Or a really cool spinning kick that kind of lands, but the guy blocks it all the way. So both techniques were very close to finishing the fight, but blocked enough to where it was like at that point as a judge, let's say those are the only two things that happened. As a judge, who do you say wins that fight, that round?
So that's tough, but I think in terms of the rules established currently, it's the same because it in the sense that we have to see how the rest of the round goes, obviously. But if the rules as we stand right now are aggressiveness, which they state that's a big deal, ring control, all that's octagon control, all that stuff. If a guy goes for an armbar attempt, even though he messes it up, that's effort. That's aggressiveness. He's attempting things. Same thing with the head kick. If the guy's out there throwing head kicks, okay, maybe the guy's blocking or whatever. And again, we never really know how much damage a kick does until later in the fight where we kind of see the other fighter's reaction. But I feel like it's even. It's MMA, and we have a fighter who's being aggressive, who's attempting moves, and it's even more noticeable if the other guy doesn't do anything. If you have a 3-minute round where it was just them hugging on the ground, switching from side control to full guard the whole time, and only one guy attempted one submission, I give it to the guy who attempted the submission. He went for something.
I agree. So again, going back to the example, we can agree that an attempt at an armbar that almost lands but not really is kind of the same as a spinning kick to the head, where it lands was kind of like the armbar did, but the guy slightly blocks it.
Depending how the rest of the round goes.
Let's say it was a round where all you had to judge was that. Like, you walked in, you see one guy do that, they stand up, the other guy throws the kick, the round ends. Like,
in MMA, it should be the same because it's MMA.
You made that a 9-9 round, right? I think the way the judge, well, if it's a draw, let's say if both guys.
Oh, you mean each tried one? Got it.
Each tried one in that same round. The round's a draw because you would weigh them equally.
Again, that's tough.
Thing. It's tough, and you have to see the rest of the round. But I'm just giving you. Let's say that's all that there was. Which one do you value more? Because at the end of the day, that's what judging is, right? You're looking at sequences and you're piecing together who you think the winner of the round is. I would say that'd be an even round. Now, philosophically, but maybe for the sake of scoring a fight, you would probably side with, and most people would, with the spinning kick because it's what people are more familiar with. They're more familiar with the fact that a kick can end the fight at the last, that a kick can potentially knock out the dude and end the fight quickly. And maybe they're not aware of the fact that an armbar can actually end the fight too. But here's the only thing. The armbar has to end the fight if the guy taps. Just because you get a slight armbar, just because you get a good armbar on someone doesn't mean that that it's a fight-ending move, right? Because the guy can easily do some crazy stuff, get out of it, or survive long enough to where the round ends, get saved by the bell, etc. But a knockout, you have no say. You get hit, lights go out. So it's technically speaking, the spinning kick that got partially blocked, actually, if I'm being a devil's advocate, would actually be that much more of a point score in the judge's eyes because of the fact that it could have ended the fight sooner than an armbar.
For sure. I mean, and that's what the judges are doing now anyways. I mean, you got boxing judges where they're known for judging impact, person-to-person impact. And you only see that in kickboxing. You're not going to see that in jiu-jitsu. And that is really the core of the problem, because I think, like I said, I think they're the same, because if you have a guy who, and maybe for those who don't know the terminology, but for those who do, you say you're being mounted. You're at the bottom, and somehow you reverse that, and within 1 second of reversing it, you got the guy in an armbar. That is incredibly impressive jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And that will always be more than the guy who threw a spinning kick and the other opponent blocked it. Like, cool, but you got blocked. But of course, at the same time, when you throw a head kick, you don't really know how much damage it did to the opponent, so that's hard to judge. But that's the main problem, that you need, and you know I've said this before. You need the judges that are fully aware of what's happening to better make that decision in a case like that, where you have one guy who threw a head kick and the other guy who did the armbar. Well, what was the more complex move in each perspective?
I mean, but here's the thing, complex. I mean, it takes a lot of time to get that. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir because you actually do stuff with kicks. I've never thrown a kick in my life. But watching enough of UFC, I know that the kick requires many years of practice just to get the timing, the range, the comfort with it. Like it's its own level of complex. I think at that point you're judging. You might be judging too much, or you might be over judging. I would say, because at that point you kind of have to pick a philosophy more along the lines of which one has the highest potential to end. Like at the end of the day, why do we rate a shot to the head more than a clean shot to the body? It's because on average, the head shot has a higher potential to end the fight with a knockout. Whereas a body shot, you could hit him in the solar plex and with a knee and take his air out and he goes out, or hit him in the kidneys and he goes to the ground, whatever. But on average, the shots to the head are much more damaging. We know that, which is why we give them more value. So on that mentality, I would see how a spinning head kick that lands semi-landed is just as important as a guy who threw up an armbar that didn't lock it in all the way.
It's definitely such as
jiu-jitsu takes more steps by nature because it's you have to entangle, control, and all this. But the other one required a setup, like stepping, like sidestepping him, figuring out his movement, timing him. So for me, it's a toss-up. I just think that you're right, though. We should defund the police. No, defund the UFC judges. We should defund them and we should bring in actual judges. Like I think to be a UFC judge, if the UFC wants to hire like an outside, which is what they do now, right? Like the judges the judges that are at cage side, they're not UFC appointed judges.
No, it's the commission, so the state appoints them.
Right. So the state appoints these. I think states need to make sure that if they appoint someone to judge a competition, that there is a level of competence and understanding in that sport. So if you're doing
MMA, I don't understand why more fighters aren't judges. It seems to me like easy money.
Like right, the same way that they're commentators.
Like well, they're not gonna get paid as much as commentators, but it's so much easier. A lot of stuff, it's like, hey, can you just drive up to Vegas one weekend and judge a fight? Sure. Here's 10 grand. Like, awesome, done.
Yeah, but if it requires a committee that actually hires referees, and then these referees, essentially these are full-time referees. They're doing UFC stuff, and then they're going. Sorry, I meant judges this whole time, by the way. Judges, right? They're full-time judges. UFC hires judges. They fly all over the place to do different events, and then when the UFC events are not there, maybe this commission sends these judges to other organizations. I can imagine maybe amateur boxing and stuff, and
you definitely can never have the UFC hire them. That'd be a big problem.
That's how you become corrupt.
Yeah,
then you have Mayweather saying, "I want these judges in my fight." It's like, who the fuck? What?
Yeah, no, that can definitely never happen.
And I'm not saying Mayweather's not great. I'm just saying he was great, and on top of the fact that he was great, he had a lot of tables tilted his way. I'm not saying he wasn't great, but you can't ignore the fact that once you put the judge you want there and the referee you want there, you're essentially like create a character. You're creating your own career mode. So yeah, you're right. Corruption out of the way. I would still like it to be the format where they get an outside source, but that this source has to be held accountable so that the judges know jiu-jitsu, have at least trained. Like, come on, man. You can't be the guy in Vegas who watches the surveillance cameras of all your dealers on the floor right now dealing poker hands. And if your job is to make sure no cheating is going on, you can't not be a dealer at one point or know how the dealing works. You just can't. But yet we're having these boxing referee mixed martial arts. And this is what happened. There was a guy who fought not too long ago on one of the, I think we talked about this, on one of the lower cards. Man, the guy had his back the entire round. For 4 minutes, he had his back. But because he took like one or two punches prior to that, Before they went to the ground, the judges gave the other guy the round, even though this dude had his back the entire round with some great jiu-jitsu and great control. The judges were like, no, but he got punched twice, so no, that doesn't count. It's like, dude, he controlled a professional fighter for 4 minutes only to end up losing the round after getting punched only twice. He didn't even get hurt. He wasn't. So I'm saying that level, that kind of incompetence cannot be allowed. Real quick, do you think John Jones lost the Reyes fight, for example? Did you watch the?
I did. I don't think he lost it. I think that what made it seem like he lost it to a lot of people was it's not the Jones everyone went to go see. You know, you think of, okay, Jones is fighting. Oh, I'm gonna go see a badass fight tonight. And no, he played it smart. He knew he was going up against. He did what a martial artist did. He adapted to his opponent. Reyes did do damage, and he should be really proud of how far he took Jones because he really pushed him to his limit, I think. But I think Jones just kept his cool, and it seemed to us like he was losing, ball because it's not what we expected.
Right, but no, I'm telling you, I scored the fight round by round, and that's probably one of the last things I want to touch on judging because I didn't even think we meant to go into this subject, but I don't give a fuck. To be honest, I don't care.
That's the beauty of podcasting; we can do whatever we want.
Hell yeah! So, you have this judge issue where there's a philosophy right now where I've kind of like changed my mind a little bit. It's not that I've changed my mind; it's more that I've been more open to other things. So check this out. As it stands right now, a UFC fight is scored round by round, and the judges are not required to hand their cards at the end of each round. They hold on to their entire judging card until the fight is over, and then they can. I mean, so here's what that starts to lend itself to: situations where you have a judge who, for example, round 2 just ended. Ooh, that was a close round. I don't know how to call it. Let me just sit on that and think about it. And now what's happening is I'm allowing rounds 3, rounds 4, and rounds 5 to affect the way I'm judging round 2, so that if at the end of the fight comes and it's a close fight and all that, and I still don't know how to score round 2, but this fighter ended really strong rounds 4 and 5, I'm also going to give him round 2, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Do you have a moral problem with that? Like, do you have a philosophical issue with that?
It all depends on what we establish as a society and as a sport. If the sport decides that the rules are round per round, then yeah, it's obviously a problem. And we've agreed to that. That's what it is today. That's the rule.
But so is it though? Is it though? Because here's the thing: we do score round by round, right? Because every judge is required to provide a number for the winner, which is 10, and then the loser getting 9 or less, right?
Yeah.
So it is a round by round scoring system, but the fact that the judges keep the entire card in front of them is a problem. Because you're asking me to score round by round, but you're also not making sure that I turn in. So here's the thing: judges right now, since they don't have to turn in that card, they can actually, like, it's like a test, right? You skip number 2, and then maybe you get to question 7 or 8, and the answer's there, kind of, because the way the question's asked. Yeah. It's like, oh, in 1912, what happened in 1912? I don't know. But then you go to the question 7, and the question says, after the revolution of 1912, who took over? It's like, oh, okay, 1912, there was a revolution. What I'm trying to say is you can go back and change or modify or draw in an answer that you didn't have. Should that be allowed to begin with? Is it okay for a judge to score a round after seeing all the other rounds that followed it?
Again, you can only answer that once we've decided on something. So if the UFC was to come out openly and like admit, okay, look, we're going to allow the refs to do this. And all the fans, okay, fine, we've accepted this. Okay, then yeah, that'd be fine, because if we're judging a martial artist doing damage to win a fight, leg kicks in the first round that maybe it was the round you lost led to the fight. Look at the second Stipe and Cormier fight. If it wasn't for those hooks, he was losing that fight.
Yeah.
So if we agree to it as a community and everyone's aware of it, sure, that's fine. But because it's not coming out and no one is stating for a fact we're allowing it or we're not allowing it, it leads to controversy. So as of now, it's not okay, because we're obviously assuming that they shouldn't be doing that.
I just think that the way the UFC sets it up right now is round by round. Yeah, but again, it's not implementing it, if that's the case. No, which means it's not really round by round. Because, yeah, you could be all about it. Like, hey, we make sure the judges score round by round. Okay, then if you agree with scoring having to be done round by round, why are you allowing the judges to have one sheet in front of them where they can actually not even write in what they wanted for that round? Yeah. Wait for rounds 3, 4, and 5 to kind of give them an overall perspective of the fight. and then go back to round 2 and scratch it out. I would say that if you're saying that if you vouch for the fact that you are a round by round type of mentality, then you should live by it.
Sure.
So my problem is not so much that it should be one way or another, because the flip side to this is also a good one. And it's that, a fight being scored round by round is kind of like a very, for example, the Reyes fight. I think John Jones lost that fight round by round.
Okay.
Round 1, 2, and 3 went to Reyes. Rounds 4 and 5 went to Jones. That's how I scored it. But if you ask me, hey, who won that fight? Who controlled more of that fight? John Jones had way better. He had the only takedowns where he controlled somewhat. He landed when John Jones was landing, Reyes was like tired and he looked like he was beat. The actual winner of the fight could have been John Jones. It was still a close fight, but I think overall, John Jones did the more menacing things to Reyes. But the problem is that you're looking at it round by round, and now you have to go, well, now I'm giving it to Reyes. If I scored round 3, 2, and 1 to Reyes, I got to give him the fight. I can't give it to Jones. Even if he won for round 4 and 5 more convincingly, by points, I got to give it to Reyes. So there's this philosophical issue with, should a fight be round by round? I think it boils down to that. Or should it be, that you should be able to look at the entire fight and make a decision? And if that's the case, then the UFC doesn't have that in place, because as it is right now, you can actually go back and erase that. You can actually go back and change the way you feel about a round just because you're.
And one factor you're forgetting is these judges could even be affected by the fans' reaction.
Yeah. Side note.
Especially since they're boxing ones. That a guy maybe does a really cool jiu-jitsu move. He might not know what's happening, but the fans read it. Oh, that must be good. Okay, boom. So far he's winning the round.
But here's the problem with that is that a lot of times the guy that's doing the cool moves is the guy on the bottom, and then the judges see a guy on top, and everyone cheering, and they might even go, "Oh, guy on top's doing some cool shit." It's like, no, you missed it. It's actually the guy on bottom. You dumbass.
It definitely should be round to round, because it keeps it where it's a safer bet at the end who actually won, because fights are very liquid and they can be subjective, and it's hard to see two guys go 5 rounds and judge an entire fight in those last 30 seconds. So round for round, I feel like it just makes for a better decision at the end, because you're able to take a minute, judge the last 5 minutes that just happened. Okay, cool. Next round, start fresh. Judge those next 5 minutes and how they perform. Also, it helps fighters be more strategic, makes the sport more entertaining in that aspect where, game plan's changing. The guy's not doing what we thought we did. Second round, let's try this. And that makes it for more excitable coaching and everything. But to be honest, man, you know what it all comes down to, both in the judging, scorecard, everything, is I just don't think the sport's being respected yet for what it is. Because it is being controlled by the state, and the state determines all this stuff, the fact that they're okay with it being boxing, because they're just seen as, there's just a bunch of guys fighting. There's no respect for the sport. And that's something I think just UFC, Bellator, you have to work on and be aggressive with the commissions and be like, hey, listen, this is like a legit sport. There's rules, there's principles. A boxing judge just isn't enough because X, Y, and Z reasons. But I think it comes down to respect.
I mean, agreed. It's like, oh, we gave you a fighting judge. Fighting. Get the fuck over there.
Exactly.
It's the same. It's all the same shit. Essentially one person beating the other guy over the head. It doesn't take much. Just send him a boxing judge and you should be fine. I agree. I think but there's a lot of negligence there, and I think that you're right. I think that there has to be some kind of uproar. I mean, there's got to be like maybe a protest in motion to get better judges. I think we should protest the streets.
I'm surprised the UFC hasn't done anything to that. I don't know if it's because they're scared of being banned from the state, but you would think they'll do something about it sooner, because it really does affect them. How many controversial fights have we not had that makes the UFC look really bad? Especially the casuals. There's a lot of people out there that think the judges are paid by the UFC.
I watch a lot of UFC, and I didn't know how the judges thing worked. I mean, again, this was many years ago but I mean, at one point I had watched UFC for years before I found out exactly how the ins and outs work and how scorecards actually work.
There's people out there that still believe wrestling is real, so there's definitely people out there that believe UFC pays the refs and the judges. So that hurts, because how many controversial fights have there not been? And you're probably thinking, the UFC wanted that guy to win.
Yeah, man. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%, man. But and that's maybe one thing we can touch up on another episode is the fact that on top of that, The UFC's got a lot of barriers to deal with, pay is one thing we could talk about for next episode, man. But we have wrapped up this hour. If you want, we can end here and then do one sometime soon. Other than that, and if you guys are tuning in wondering what the hell we're talking about, honestly, I don't know. This is our first episode together. So it's like, you want to hear about Fight Island or lack thereof? Stay tuned. You want to hear about mixed martial arts, bad judges and stuff like that? Stay tuned. You want to hear stay tuned.
Follow. Tell us what you guys want us to talk about, and then that's what we'll do.
For sure. So it's at Game On Sports Podcast. If you are on Instagram, if you're on Twitter, it's Game On Everyone. I am Studio Z87 with an underscore somewhere between the letters and the words. Where can they find you, man? What's your at?
So I'm also on Instagram. I don't post much there, but I'm very active in it. So I'll comment, I'll reply, whatever it is. And Twitter, I'm also very active, and that's as Raul as it gets. Pretty simple.
As Raul, instead of as real as it gets, as Raul as it gets. RAUL, right? That's pretty dope. I like that. I like that a lot because that's the UFC, slogan and stuff. So, or it used to be. I think they took it down. But anyway, guys, until next time, Game On Sports Podcast for everyone. This is Fight On. You guys stay tuned. Raul, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. See you soon.
Bye.